Hi, my name is Arjun Chaudhary, and welcome to Energize, the Tech Revolution. Today, we have a very special guest amongst us. David Charlebois is the Business Development and Marketing Manager for ILF Canada, overseeing the growth across all business areas, client satisfaction, strategic initiatives, industry partnerships, and brand awareness. David is a highly motivated, results driven professional with a track record of rapid advancement over his 15 plus years of experience in the energy industry of Canada. David has worked for engineering and procurement service providers his entire career, performing several roles across engineering, project management, and business development. His project execution and development experience spans the full project lifecycle, from conceptual studies, all engineering stages, to construction and commissioning. A member of the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Alberta, APEGA, David is a registered professional engineer. He received his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering with a minor in Petroleum Engineering and a minor in Entrepreneurship and Enterprise Development from the Schulich School of Engineering, University of Calgary. Welcome to the show, David.
My pleasure, Arjun.
So, David, your professional journey has been fascinating and exciting. Would love to learn more about your professional journey from you and what got you excited to start prioritizing clean energy.
Yeah, fantastic. And just a shout out, Arjun, once again. I mean, I've been a big fan of Energize since you launched it and all of your posts. So keep up the great work. In terms of myself, um, as kind of my intro alluded to, mechanical engineering is my background, office design, field experience. Eventually moved on to the project and engineering management side of things on the execution. Um, Larger projects, multiple projects at a time, and then found my way on the business development, technical side at first, and then more external client facing. In terms of clean energy and energy transition type initiatives, I would say the tipping point for me was probably a little bit before COVID, and then once COVID hit, it definitely a little bit of a wake up call for myself in terms of global energy systems, how they interact with Canada, what we're doing in terms of our initiatives here at home, but also what Canada can do on a global scale to help mitigate global emissions, because it's one big pool in terms of the emissions going into the atmosphere. It doesn't matter where they come from. And Canada obviously is a small player in terms of our individual emissions. And I think really looking to the future, maybe I think every person kind of comes across that. You maybe envision yourself sitting down one day old and talking to your grandkids or your children, and thinking of what have you done, what kind of contribution have you done, and I certainly want to be able to contribute to a sustainable future.
That's great to hear, David. Now, could you share more about your current role in your organization, more about your organization, and what sort of specific initiatives you're leading there?
Yeah, 100%. ILF Consultant Engineers is a global firm, still originally founded in 1967, still an independent private engineering consultancy. Um, very, very storied past, I would say. The I in ILF is a German word for engineering. L and F are the two surname co-founders, Mr. Lesser and Mr. Fitzelmeyer. Mr. Fitzelmeyer, the original, is still involved in the organization under his Adolf Fitzelmeyer Foundation, and Mr. Lesser. He passed away maybe in my first 6 months with the company, but his children have all been involved, and I think even his grandkids now are involved in the business. One of his sons is a global CEO who sits in Innsbruck, Austria. Um, Very, very quality focused long-term relationship. Mr. Lesser, Klaus himself, is a extremely strong proponent of sustainability and clean energy. Just this past year, we've rolled out a sustainability training. I think they call it Sustainability Foundation training across the globe. So that involves 3,500 plus individuals. Sit down. I believe it's about a 5 hour training session to kind of start building up the foundation and educating the team. And of course, everyone within the ILF organization understands there's an integrated type energy approach. So it's all the new energy and technologies that are coming up, but also in terms of taking the existing industrial applications and helping to decarbonize and optimize them. In terms of initiatives that I'm leading here in Canada and sometimes opportunistic over the borders in the south, anywhere from green hydrogen ammonia exportation facilities in Atlantic Canada, to oil and gas, a lot of natural gas pipelines in Western Canada. Obviously, with the demand and the push for West Coast LNG exportation, just right across the board. ILF in Canada, we deal a lot with midstream clientele.
That's a lot of great initiatives, David, and also many congratulations on all the training initiatives within the organization. That's great to hear. Now let's dive deep into a specific segment of your initiatives you're leading, specifically hydrogen technology. Now, for the benefit of our viewers, could you describe what exactly is hydrogen technology and what is the difference between green hydrogen technology and blue hydrogen technology?
Yeah, it's a lot of industry proponents. They either love the hydrogen rainbow or they hate it. A lot of folks, want to get away from the colors and kind of more focus on the carbon intensity of it to really quantify what counts as, call it, low carbon hydrogen production. But yes, to your point, green hydrogen is typically hydrogen production through a technology known as electrolysis. Electrolysis is not new; it's been around for probably 100 years in terms of the alkaline technology, and more recently the PEM model. And essentially, you're taking water H2O, and you're splitting it into the H2, the hydrogen component, in a gaseous form, and the oxygen. And typically, it's powered. The electrolyzers themselves are powered electrically by renewable sources. So that can be solar, that can be wind. Typically, people would say hydropower, but recently, advocates are getting away from that, because if you look at what a hydro dam pure carbon footprint is, some people actually cite that as non kind of low carbon, and don't classify it as green, and vice versa. On the blue side, blue hydrogen is essentially taking either steam methane reformer technology, which, once again, I mean, this is from 1960s, used a lot in refining facilities, or autothermal reforming, splitting up methane through natural gas feeds. And with that, you typically have your hydrogen production, but you're also creating CO2 emissions. So what blue hydrogen does is it takes the gray hydrogen production and adds a carbon capture technology on top of it. And commercially available these days are amine type based capture technologies. And then you capture that, you either convert it into a usable product or you permanently sequester it.
I see. So once this hydrogen is produced, what is that hydrogen product actually used in the market for, and what are its environmental impacts and benefits?
Yeah, interesting perspective and direction here, Arjun. It's very interesting because I find, at least in Canada, we're almost trying to create a hydrogen supply and demand simultaneously. Traditionally, nowadays, hydrogen consumption is mostly used for industrial applications, so further hydrocarbon cracking in terms of refining and upgrading processes. It's also used as an input to fertilizer, ammonia production, along with nitrogen. Um, but they're also starting to see uses in hydrogen fueling stations. This is kind of more in Europe, but even here in Canada, we're starting to see applications of that. Whether or not it's test trials in heavier haul transportation, such as railway, which CKPC and ACO are piloting in terms of rail and stations. And then also from a call it a methane pyrolysis hydrogen production. You're producing two byproducts, which is the hydrogen, but also the carbon black or the graphite, which depends on what grade you produce that to, but it can be used for battery production in electric vehicles and so forth. So people are definitely looking for to grow that consumption. But for now, it's definitely a little bit of a chicken egg type scenario.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. Now, at this present moment, how many currently operating green hydrogen facilities are out there, whether it's in North America or Europe or on the globe? Would love to have some idea about that.
Yeah, this is a tough one, eh? You're not you're not making it easy on me. Pull out the facts, eh? I would say, in terms of pure green hydrogen, electrolyzer type projects that are in operation, I would caution say it's on the, small scale side. There's probably a few hundred over in Europe, across countries such as Spain, France, Germany, especially. And these things are probably fueling things such as, it could be heat-in decarbonization production. It could be, we talked about the mobility. So over there, hydrogen vehicles are more common in the passenger side, but also even in terms of heavier haul truck transportation. In Canada and North America, I would say you're probably looking at a handful. The largest one I'm aware of, kind of more on a commercial scale, would be Air Liquide's. I believe it's a 20 megawatt PEM electrolyzer in Bécancour, Quebec, and that was commissioned a number of years ago. And obviously, that's Air Liquide. It's as a global worldwide gas supplier. That's what they're using the hydrogen for. And I believe it's I'm going to say it's probably hydropower driven.
Great, great, David. Now, early in our conversation, you briefly described the process of green hydrogen. Would you have anything more to share about the actual process end to end of green hydrogen technology, and also what are the major pieces of equipment that are involved?
For sure. So I mean, like you said, Arjun, I kind of touched on some of the components there on the solar wind, the electrolyzers themselves, and different. So I mean, in addition, I mentioned alkaline and PEM. There's also solid state or solid oxide technology that's coming up. There's other more disruptive type technologies, which are almost, you could say, a combination between alkaline and PEM that are looking at more common day metallurgy to lower the price of the electrolyzer themselves and not such exotic materials. And in addition to that, it depends on where the project is. But obviously, the water feedstock is a big issue. I mean, you're talking. Um, I believe it's like almost like a 10-to-1 type ratio of 10 kilograms of water input to a single kilogram of hydrogen produced. So certainly a big commodity. If you have available fresh water, that probably lowers the capital equipment costs of your projects. But a lot of projects, certainly in the Middle East right now, they draw from the ocean or seawater. And with that, you have the addition of a desalination type package, further water treatment before it goes into the electrolyzer. And then on the outlet side of things, you would have compression. You would have potential liquefaction if you're going to actually produce and transport the liquid hydrogen, or if you're going to keep it in gaseous form. Um, and certainly the overall process optimization across that flow is critical as well.
Very, very nicely explained, David. Now, let's say, for example, an engineering company is hired to create and design a green hydrogen facility. What are the typical stakeholders and teams involved in the design of such a facility? And what would be like the typical budget and schedule?
They keep getting harder, eh? No, it's a solid question, Arjun. I mean, it's in terms of, I mean, let's focus on mega scale, right? So I mean, you're talking these are hydrogen, green hydrogen, or all the way to green ammonia, which is essentially taking your produced green hydrogen, and you have a air capture unit in addition, which is capturing, taking the air and capturing the nitrogen from it, adding it to the hydrogen in ammonia synthesis, and most likely also a liquefaction on the downstream side to transport that ammonia in liquid form. So I mean these are mega projects. You're definitely say you're reaching around, plus a couple hundred or, plus 200, 250 megawatts in terms of electrolysis capacity, power. You're upwards of, a couple billions in terms of investment, TIC. In terms of stakeholders, obviously there's right now in Canada, if we focus on, let's say, Atlantic Canada, there's huge government involvement. A lot of the wind generation sites are looking to be developed on Crown land. So if that's in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and if it's not Crown land, also there's a highly likelihood that the amount of land area that you need for either your wind farm or solar backup or battery energy storage will be on potential indigenous land. So indigenous engagement, economic reconciliation in terms of the indigenous communities getting involved with those projects from a future revenue and operational perspective is another huge. And I would say the communities, obviously in Atlantic Canada, the population density is a little bit lower. But the communities are obviously very invested and very interested in what's going up. So there's, numerous town halls, education, engagement, answering questions, really positive spin on it. And, rightfully so, but also what is getting injected locally back into those communities. So, I mean, a lot of the companies nowadays, I mean, it's the same type of thing you see on the West Coast with, LNG. You're talking about job creation, injection of finances into the local community, and then obviously future operational jobs. It's not just move in, move out. Um, and in terms of timeline, it's extensive. I mean, we've seen projects like it would be no different than LNG, let's say LNG Canada as an example, right? This project is 10 plus years. Hasn't very soon, I think in April coming up here, very soon, but hasn't even shipped its first LNG container ship yet. You're talking about environmental impact assessments, permanent regulatory. In terms of the wind farms, you're talking about putting up met towers and collecting meteorological data for years, not just for weeks or months, to really prove out the design of that wind farm. And then, as we touched on, the community engagement is a very long period of time that can but then also companies what they have been trying to do to speed up that time in terms of the permitting and the regulatory and industrial use purposing of their facility is to look at past existing facilities that may have already been cited for that, whether or not it's existing ports or shipping, oil terminals on the East Coast. There's sites that were planned and maybe started early construction civil works for LNG production, which was never brought to fruition. So, these projects are being pretty smart, trying to be creative in terms of speeding up that process. And obviously, there's only so much that a private industry company can do, but if the government can become involved in terms of insured guaranteed policies, I think it would speed things up in terms of overall development.
For sure. And thanks for sharing the different moving parts of the design process. Now, could you share some of the success stories of your customers in implementing green hydrogen technology?
Yeah, it's I would probably preface by saying in Canada we're certainly at an earlier maturity in terms of hydrogen or green hydrogen on the consumption side of the value chain. ILF in Europe, we've successfully designed all the way from conceptual, feed detail, construction, commission, and support on smaller scale electrolyzer projects. So this could be, 4 to 10 megawatt for industrial commercial users where the produced hydrogen has been used for heating purposes to decarbonize and get away from oil and natural gas. And it's also been used for hydrogen fueling stations for that businesses call it delivery fleet truck mobility. So that's certainly a fantastic um, example there. And in Canada, I alluded to a little bit earlier. We ILF. We were not fortunate to be involved on some of these initiatives, but ACO, as I said, is partnered with companies such as CKPC in terms of rail trial periods in terms of production of a rail engine that's running 100% on hydrogen, and then the associated hydrogen fueling station, and those type of whether or not it's also the I think Edmonton Calgary highway corridor. There's hydrogen fueling stations in Edmonton now. They're looking to develop them in Calgary and have the heavy haul trucks utilize and fill up on those stations. Just a couple examples there, but the I think the potential of these applications, Arjun, is where I think you have to focus, and it's we're in Canada, we're obviously behind in terms of the European landscape and consumption, but it's really about what is the end game, and I think some really cool initiatives. I keep talking about ACO just because I mean they're quite bullish in terms of the hydrogen space, especially here in Alberta. I mean, all public knowledge. I think they rolled out a number of months ago the first residential house that's fully compliant, running around on hydrogen. So it's hydrogen powered furnace, range stove, and it's very cool stuff. So these type of initiatives are still to be seen if they're sustainable, economical, but someone's got to be the first, and you definitely need to have those early leaders.
Absolutely, absolutely, David. Now, looking at the future, where do you see trends and innovations happening in green hydrogen technology and the specific usage of artificial intelligence?
Figure AI comes into every conversation that way.
That's right.
I think in terms of innovation, probably similar to the evolution that took place over the last 15, 20 years in solar panels technology. Started as excessively expensive, a barrier for entry, and now it's almost a in some cases you build a solar farm, and the megawatt to power generation is either cheaper or on the same playing field as a fossil fuel facility. And I think that just came from what you're probably going to see in with electrolyzers is more R&D. I talked about the one company where I know they're looking at common day metallurgy. So I mean that's a huge cost reduction. I mean it's just like selecting a material for a pipeline, carbon steel versus stainless steel. Huge cost savings there. And I think right now you're probably at a very small scale manufacturing. A lot of different companies are trying to figure it out. They're getting into the game, and there's, okay, how do we produce this? They perfect it, they optimize it, but then there's always the scaling process about how they bring it up to commercial scale. So companies are actually looking to invest in specific dedicated manufacturing facilities for electrolyzers. And it could just be the individual stacks that they're manufacturing, they're churning out, and then those can be almost like a small Lego block that goes into you take that stack, add it in series to other stacks. Then you have a module, take that module, amplify it, and then you get your 100 megawatt or 200 megawatt electrolysis capacity that these mega projects are looking at, or even gigawatt scale. From an AI perspective, I think AI probably comes into play in terms of optimizing those manufacturing processes, virtually running, multiple simulations in terms of what it looks like from either a process optimization standpoint, manufacturing, just having the machine learning in terms of the background and understanding um, where that would take copious amounts of times from a human perspective.
Great, great, David. Now, shifting our conversation from a career standpoint of view, you are such a successful senior leader, including in clean energy. What advice would you have for somebody who's looking to develop their skills in clean energy? Like, what advice in terms of skill sets, certifications? Would love to learn more from you on that.
Yeah, spot on, Arjun. I mean, I definitely with my job, I'm definitely fortunate enough to get out and meet a lot of younger folks. And some of them are graduating, traditional oil and gas, petroleum. Some of them are renewable by background. Um, I kind of see it as an overall quilt from an energy, you have. Excuse me. But from it's not just oil and gas or clean energy. It's a quilt in terms of energy system, energy companies. You're an energy engineer. I think really is, you hone your skills, no matter what you are. Be curious. The problems and the challenges that we have in front of us are so massive, where you need that creativity. Don't accept as things are today. Be courageous enough to kind of challenge the norms. Is there a better way? How can you incorporate things? And collaboration, I think, is a huge theme in terms of what we're seeing, because there's no there's no single individual, there's no single company, or even country that can tackle issues in front of us today. It's going to take a collaboration across the scale, and I think that starts. You can have a small project, you can have industry involvement, academic, government, multiple industry providers, and they're working together. They're exchanging. If there's certain individuals that are, let's say, they're in a different industry, from either even energy, or if they're oil and gas and they want to say get into clean energy. Um, I think one benefit that most people underestimate is the different perspective you can bring when you kind of mesh together, cross industries. You get into, I don't know if it's a bias or if it's a routine type thing, where you're in the energy industry and you're never mixing with people outside that. It's a certain way of thinking. But okay, tech industry, even, I don't know, just healthcare industry, education. It's how do these things intermingle? Cross industries can definitely benefit. But from an individual basis, what you can do is, never stop learning. Self-learning, education, reading is an extremely powerful tool.
Very, very sound advice, David. Are there any specific like industry conferences or events that you would recommend our viewers and listeners attending?
In terms of the theme of the podcast here on the hydrogen side, um, the main staple hydrogen convention that I've been a part of the last number of years is the Canadian Hydrogen Convention in Edmonton, which is coming up at the end of April. And I think it's the fourth or fifth year it's been running, but every year it gets bigger and bigger, and different, whether or not it's an amalgamation of R&D, startup, big oil and gas operator, energy companies, technology providers, and engineering service providers such as ILF. It definitely brings together some great minds. Um, More growing. I've been more recently aware of a couple conferences taking place in Atlantic Canada. I believe they go by the name Hydrogen East, one in Halifax, one in Toronto, and a very unique conference, I would say, and it lives up to their name, is Energy Disruptors. I think it's quite famous. It's been growing in Calgary. They had one last year. I think they're taking a break this year, but then they're making it a little bit of a biannual type event. But very, very deliberate in bringing together government, multinational representatives, startup type companies, technology, large energy firms, for the commercial, industrial scale, um, and I would say academics, R&D, thought leaders, and it's such a cool spin they put on it in terms of the variety of the discussions. It's yeah, fantastic. I mean, I would certainly recommend it.
That's great, David. Thanks for sharing all the great events with our viewers here. So that concludes the formal portion of our interview for today, David. We like to end our podcast with a fun segment called a rapid fire, where our viewers and listeners get to learn a little bit more about the personal side of our guests. So, as part of this rapid fire, I'll be asking you three quick questions. So, are you ready?
As ready as I'm gonna be, Arjun.
Great, great, David. So, firstly, as this is a tech podcast, would love to learn what's your favorite hardware product or software app that you enjoy using.
Yeah, there's an app for everything nowadays, eh? It's I can't get out of bed without one, but I would probably say my EV. My car is probably one of the from a personal perspective, probably one of the coolest, hardware technologies that I own. Just loaded with technology from autonomous driving and whatnot. And it's yeah, just very cool to gives it always makes it feel a bit more futuristic.
Amazing. Now, secondly, what's a book that you have read that has had a big impact on your life and why?
I mean, keeping with the theme of the session here, I would say on the climate side, I think a couple of years ago I read Bill Gates' How to Avoid Climate Disaster, I believe it's called, and the biggest takeaway from there is he had certain themes in terms of how he categorizes things, like how we move around, how we make things. It really makes you think in terms of how everything is integrated from a circular type perspective. And then one book I'm reading right now is how big projects get done, or how big things get done. I believe that's two authors, Bent um, Fitzberg, or I probably butchered his name there, but and then Dan Gardner. Yeah, very interesting in terms of tackling mega projects, which is of course a theme of what we talked about here and a theme of the future.
Great, David. Thank you for that. And lastly, do you have any final words of wisdom for our audience? Perhaps a short story or quote that you'd like to share?
Probably already spoke too much, so I won't try to start an anecdote here, but um, yeah, it's been a reoccurring quote from a couple of recent books that I've read or I've listened to, and I think it's originally from Abraham Lincoln, but he says, "If you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'm gonna take the 4 hours sharpening the axe." And it kind of really hits home because, and especially, trying to stick with the theme here. I mean, you're talking about, meticulous planning, transferred to the execution side of things. And it's really, and another theme coming out of the how big things get done is you think slow and you act fast, versus the other way around where you just jump into something and then it's too late to change things. As a, let's say, engineering project, it's a lot easier to make changes in the planning stage when you let's say you're in the blueprint phase than if you're on site, and piles are already driven and you're in construction. So it really makes you kind of sit back and say, you know what, especially in the such a fast-paced, modern, hustle bustle society that we live in. I think it really kind of sets you back in kind of an older time where, you know what, you need to really ground yourself from a planning and preparation before diving in.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. So that concludes our interview for today. How can our viewers and listeners get in touch with you?
LinkedIn, I'm pretty active. It's probably your best bet.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David, for being on the show today. It was an absolute honor and pleasure having you. And thank you so much for sharing a subject matter expertise on hydrogen technology. From the team at Energize, wishing you and the entire team of ILF Consulting Engineers lots of growth and lots of success.
Really appreciate it, Arjun. My pleasure.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our episode for today. And remember, a greener future is in our hands. I'm Arjun Chaudhary.